After Kevin Durant rescinded his trade request, that immediately removed all likelihood that Kyrie Irving would end up being a Los Angeles Laker, as many had speculated. To top that off, pretty much all trade discussions involving them moving Russell Westbrook, including most prominently the Indiana Pacers move for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, those talks have pretty much disappeared, and they've signed the likes of Dennis Schroeder, and it just appears that they're just going to have to deal with Russell Westbrook being on the roster. So the question of today's video, really there's two. What does Westbrook's future look like? And really the answer to that question is entirely dependent on this next question, which is, how good is Westbrook even? Let's talk about it. Before I continue on this video, if you end up enjoying it, then please be sure to like the video to make the video do better in the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe so you can get more NBA content. Only makes sense that if you enjoy this video, you would enjoy my other videos. So yeah, do that. Also, episode 3 of my Cavs My NBA is out. The series did not do very well at launch, but frankly, I enjoy it so much that I'm going to be doing it anyways. So please go check that out, and go check out the series if you have not yet. It is a realistic rebuild of the 2009 Cleveland Cavaliers. And actually, speaking of 2K, that's one of the things that inspired this video, because it was announced, among many other things, that Russell Westbrook's 2K rating was going to be a 78. This is a few weeks ago. I had the idea for this video a few weeks ago, and it's just now coming out. But hey, 78, and that was a bit controversial. There are people like, is Russell Westbrook really a 78 at this point? Mostly meaning, is he not better than that? Although I'm sure there were some people that thought, is he not worse than that? And my conclusion to that was, Westbrook is probably like an 82, maybe on a good day an 84 type of player on another team, but he's probably a 78 on the Lakers. And obviously this is real life and not 2K ratings. What I just simply mean is, he's a better player in a different situation than the one that he is currently in. Now, that's not to take away all of the blame that can be assigned to Russell Westbrook for how much of a failure last season was, both for him and the Lakers, but I think we can all acknowledge that the situation is not exactly ideal for Russell Westbrook. Sharing the floor with another very prominent ball handler, having no floor spacing. I mean, we've seen Russell Westbrook with spacing and what he's capable of doing. We've seen what he's capable of doing as the lead ball handler. We know that he's capable of being a pretty damn good NBA player doing that. Even probably the second worst season of his career, outside of maybe his rookie year, was with the Washington Wizards, and he was still pretty damn good and played at a borderline all-star level, especially towards the end of the season. While there were ups and downs there, and that was very much one of the most prominent Russell Westbrook season cycle memes that we've ever seen, Russell Westbrook played the NBA equivalent of like an 84 with the Wizards. And that was a team that spaced the floor really well. And though Bradley Beal was a ball handler, he was not as prominent of one as LeBron James is, especially as he stepped down a little bit in his role offensively. So it's fair to say that the circumstances definitely have played a huge part in how Russell Westbrook has failed in Los Angeles. And going forward, it's looking like he's going to be stuck there for this next season. I'm not saying it's impossible he gets traded, because he is on a one-year deal that actually makes him not a negative asset, because they can take on longer-term contracts for better players in exchange for not having to deal with Russell Westbrook this year. The problem with that is, of course, they don't necessarily want to take on those contracts. Maybe they want to have that cap space freed up so they can do something later on, but also LeBron James is 38, and do you really want to take a mulligan year with him at that age, especially with Anthony Davis's injury history on top of that? It's definitely a sticky situation, because they don't want to give up all their future first-round picks, which is what they'd have to do in this move for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, just to then take on extra cap that they otherwise wouldn't have to if they just simply waited this out a year. So Russell Westbrook is very likely, I think, going to spend this upcoming season as a Los Angeles Laker. With that being the case, I expect him to repeat yet another pretty bad season. I do think it's possible it's an upgrade from last season because it really feels like he couldn't go anywhere but up from there. But either way, I don't think Russell Westbrook's going to be redeeming himself this year because the circumstances just aren't there to allow him to. So with that being the case, what exactly does his future look like? Because the main problem, and I'm not the first person to say this, and in fact, this is not the first time I've said this myself. The main problem is, how exactly are you going to find the team that puts that situation around Russell Westbrook? Is it really worth it? Because we're talking about, again, a player that would be like an 82 overall, maybe an 84 again on a good day. Are you really going to drastically contextualize or construct your roster based on achieving that level of production that ultimately isn't going to do much better than give you maybe a second round appearance at the absolute best? I don't know about that. I don't think that's really something that a team in the NBA is going to think to do. And when you go to look at all the other teams in the league, almost all of them have a solid point guard who is either better than Russell Westbrook or good enough that you're not going to make a bunch of drastic changes to make that switch. Like, Russell Westbrook might be better than Lonzo Ball. Are the Bulls going to trade for Russell Westbrook because he might be 5% better than Lonzo Ball? Absolutely fucking not. And that's just one example. Almost every other team in the league has a point guard that is either as good as Russell Westbrook, will be as good as Russell Westbrook in case it's like a young guy who's up and coming, or that player is close enough to good enough and they already have other shit going on, so we're not going to mess with it by throwing Russell Westbrook into the mix, because the circumstances that he brings as a player pretty much inherently messes with anything that you're doing. You have to make adjustments. You have to make changes to your team. You have to have a different game plan if you're going to have Russell Westbrook on the roster. So that's when things become kind of bleak. There's been talks of if Russell Westbrook will even be in the league going forward. Another talk has been, could he convert into a six-man type of player? And I'm unsure of that. I do see the vision in a way, because he does have a kind of skill set that is good to bring off of the bench. A high volume scorer and playmaker is a nice piece to have off the bench, even if that volume scoring is not the most efficient. That's not stopped people from thinking that six men like Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford are fucking amazing. So if Russ can average 17 on terrible efficiency off of the bench just like those guys did, he could see himself as like a six-man of the year type even. But the problem with that, I see, is that frankly Russell Westbrook has an ego, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. He has every right to have earned that ego. He was an MVP just 5 years ago, and I could understand him not exactly being happy taking that role. But at the same time, I also do believe that if there's just simply nobody that's going to offer him anything but that role, how he could take it, because that's the only option there is. And again, even if he's not out of the league and he is in that six-man role, that could still be kind of bleak. You could look at it as like Derrick Rose's time on the Minnesota Timberwolves, like when he was weirdly hitting his threes and had that random 50-point game, like something like that. That's maybe in store for Russell Westbrook, unless there is truly a team out there that is going to go out of their way to accommodate him. And again, I'm just not sure that I see that realistically happening. What team is going to go out of their way, again, to just simply have Russell Westbrook on the team? I don't know that there's many teams that you can look at around the league that are in the position to do that, are willing to be in the position to do that, that should do that. There's really no team where I think that is a good idea for them. Even if he got traded to the Indiana Pacers in that Buddy Hield Miles Turner deal, the Pacers are more than likely just going to immediately release Russell Westbrook, because they're not going to want Russ messing with Tyrese Halliburton's development. They don't want Tyrese to have to share the ball with another ball handler and playmaker. They want Tyrese out there getting 10 assists per game, not Russell Westbrook. So yeah, I do think when people say there's a chance he's out of the league in a few years, that does add up. And it's not because Russ is not talented enough to be in the league, but because the circumstances of unlocking that talent is just simply too high of a price to pay. And I don't even mean that in a salary context, because we're talking about him after after this year, and I'd say Russ probably nets himself like no more than $15 million a year tops, and it wouldn't be a long-term contract no matter where he goes. So it's not a money thing that Russell Westbrook isn't worth. It is the roster construction and just simply the change of dynamic. What he brings to the table is not worth interrupting a long-built culture. It's not worth undermining a culture that you're trying to build. Regardless of where you are in the stage of trying to build the dynamics of your team, Russell Westbrook's a bad idea. I could very well see him not in the league in a few years because I don't think it's going to happen immediately. I think after this year with the Los Angeles Lakers, he probably finds some team that's going to give him a chance, and those circumstances are not going to be all the way built around him, and he'll probably struggle again, and maybe he'll have some highs, but he'll definitely have his lows, and teams are just going to kind of universally come to this understanding about Russell Westbrook. And it's unfortunate because you hate to see someone that talented not be in the league, but you also kind of understand it because of those circumstances. Russell Westbrook to me has become more underrated in the past couple of years, and I do sympathize with Russell Westbrook fans. I'm sure I'm going to get plenty of hate for stating the opinion that I think he'll be out of the league soon, but unfortunately I think this is the path that he's on. I'd love to be wrong because again, I've come more around to Russell Westbrook and enjoying the good that he brings to the table rather than focusing so much on the bad. But lately, especially with the Los Angeles Lakers, it has been difficult to pay attention to anything other than the bad. And right now, that's mostly what he's bringing to the table under the circumstances of that roster. And it's mostly what he's bringing to the table under the circumstances of most rosters if they're not adjusting around him. And for the last time, no one's going to adjust around him. So yeah, is Russell Westbrook good? Yes. But does it necessarily matter for his position in the league? I don't think it does. I don't think he's good enough, really, to consistently maintain a spot in the league at his age with the problems that he has as a player. So yeah, that's kind of bleak, but yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. Go check out that Cavs series. Seriously, I work really hard on it. It's like my favorite thing to do. And even if you don't enjoy 2K content, I think you would enjoy those videos because they are realistic rebuilds. And it's, who doesn't like watching a team be built slowly over time? But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.